Welcome to Engagement Fundraising, where you'll learn how busy fundraisers like you are generating more major and planned gifts at lower costs. Brought to you by iMarketSmart.com, the software and services company that helps nonprofits raise more money more efficiently.
One of the best ways to get big dollars is to have board members or major donors introduce you to other major donors.
Hi there, welcome to Engagement Fundraising. I'm Tim Chatton, Marketing Solutionist at MarketSmart. On today's show, Greg dives into the 8 core principles of engagement fundraising. Not sure what engagement fundraising is? Well, you will soon. Here with Greg Warner, we're going to dive into the 8 core components of engagement fundraising.
Yes. Are you excited?
I'm excited. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
First episode is about principles. What's the difference between the principles and is the components kind of the execution of it all, or?
Yeah, so the 7 principles of engagement fundraising are more philosophical, but the core components are more boots on the ground, let's say. They're more tactical.
Okay.
So the first one and the big one, engagement fundraising is about accepting the Pareto principle. A man named Pareto in Italy, I think 150 years ago maybe. So he figured out that approximately 80% of the land in Italy was owned by only 20% of the people. So this was later called the Pareto principle. I think he also figured out that about 20% of the pea pods in his garden yielded 80% of the peas.
Those are some good pea pods there.
Good pea pods, right? As others began looking around, this 80-20 rule, so to speak, seemed to be able to be applied almost anywhere. And then when you look at it in the fundraising or the nonprofit sector, it had stood strong as a guiding principle that 80% of your revenue is going to come from about 20% of your donors. But that is even changing now to be more like 90-10. And that goes to...
So that's just economy of modern society? That's why it's shifting?
Yeah, modern society is shifting, that the rich are getting richer. 90% of the wealth is being accumulated by just 10% of the population. And the giving is coming from that smaller group of people.
And it's becoming quite a big thing, in fact. Younger, wealthy people are making a bigger deal of that early in their life, like Mark Zuckerberg and other, like the tech rich that's a big cultural thing that they want to be giving back. It's starting to become a part of culture in certain subsects.
Yes, it's terrific that that's happening. I can't imagine anybody would be against having everybody give and everybody give a lot. But if you're going to be an efficient and effective organization, you only have so many resources to apply to so many people. And the resources that you have, in order to be good stewards of your donors' dollars, you need to use those dollars to raise more money in the most efficient way possible. And that includes accepting the Pareto principle.
Yeah, and trying to find that 20 or 10% that's going to make the biggest impact for your organization.
Yes. If 10% of your donors provide 90% of your revenue, then you should really zero in on them. You know, in politics, they say shore up your base.
Sure.
So you should shore up your base. And one thing that people don't realize is that the best way to get new major donors is not always to get low dollar donors and move them up the pyramid, although that's a great way to do it.
Do major donors have other major donor friends?
Yeah. So just like in commercial business and the private sector, referrals are key. And wealthy people tend to associate with wealthy people, and they have wealthy family members. And oftentimes they are like-minded, and they believe in the same things, and they want to support the same kinds of missions. So you can get referrals from your Pareto principle, your top donors, for other top donors, and you can sort of skip the step of moving people all the way up the pyramid, and you could create giving clubs and so on. And look, during a capital campaign, one of the best ways to get big dollars is to have board members or major donors introduce you to other major donors. So it's just accepting that principle. I'm not knocking the idea of getting low-level donors and acquiring them and moving them up the pyramid. It's just that's probably going to be a very slow and expensive process that will take a long, long time.
Yeah, if you get a engaged 25-year-old, may not be until they're like 50 or 60 till they're ready to be giving that much, if not even later.
Yeah. Okay, so the next core component is to gain an understanding of why people really give. And I mean, not in a general sense, but why each individual gives. So now if you're targeting the top 20%, for instance, then you need to segment that audience into understanding why they give.
Is this done through surveys, or what's the feet on the ground approach to find that out?
Well, I'm biased because I invented the donor survey platform for the sector. And of course, yes, I love surveys. I think surveys are great.
What, are there other tools out there outside of surveys?
Well, I think it's always sort of a survey when you really boil it down. In the old days, they'd call it donor discovery. So sitting down and having a one-to-one, face-to-face conversation and asking people why they care. But it's also, why do they want to give? Is it in honor of somebody? Is it because they played on the soccer team 25 years ago? Is it because someone helped them with a scholarship, so now they want to give back? Is it because they're trying to change something politically? So there are drivers, and every audience of your 20% is going to break down into certain reasons why people will give major gifts. Understanding why they care and why they want to give enables you to create subsets to which you can then send offers for engagement and involvement that will resonate with those particular subsets.
Yeah, because if you don't understand why they give, you don't have a mechanism, an opening to engage with them. Instead, you're saying to someone that likes sorbet, you should try my ice cream. They don't want your ice cream, they want sorbet. And if you don't know that, you're not going to connect with them, right?
Yeah, you'll never connect with people if you're irrelevant. And your messages always need to be relevant and contextual and personalized. The more relevant, contextual, and personalized that they are, the more likely people will pay attention to them and will become involved with them and will respond to them. So capturing that information among the 20 is really, really essential. Now, that brings us to, well, how do you get that information? And that's the third core component, which is the employment of feedback loops.
Okay, and there's different mechanisms for this. I'm guessing, like just seeing if they click through on a certain part of the email, if they're donating's a feedback loop in and of itself,
yes.
Right?
Yes, donating is a terrific feedback loop, and in fact, the sector has spent way too much focusing on donations as the ultimate feedback loop. So the sector in the past would always look at recency and frequency and the monetary value of donations as the most important factor for likelihood to give again. But there's so many other ways to gain feedback, and it's more like a stew than it is just one piece of vegetable in the stew. You've got to consider, what do they say in a donor survey or a volunteer survey? What do they say on a chat tool online? Do they open the email you sent them? Do they click on it? And more important, do they watch the video in that link that you included in that? Now, even more important, do they watch the entire video? And then do they enter some information in the comments area after the video? And finally, Do they share it on Facebook with their friends? Because if you know all that and you have employed feedback loops to know all that, you're going to have a much better understanding of your supporter.
Yeah, if they're sharing a video with their friends, and especially if they're a major donor level person, they probably don't willy-nilly just share every single thing that crosses their path. They're more cautious on social media, for instance.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, because let's face it, on social media especially, people only share things that what they share is kind of like what the type of car that they buy. So people buy cars that reflect their values and kind of look like them, and they're comfortable in driving around, and people are only comfortable with sharing things that reflect their values and they're comfortable with sharing with their friends. But the trick of all this is that you have to employ feedback loops in your fundraising. You have to always be seeking feedback from your top 20% of donors in order to keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on and how likely are they to want to engage with you so that you can facilitate their giving. The timing is just plain not always right, but if you're employing feedback loops, you are then creating a way in which you can keep your finger on the pulse of each individual to know when the time is right to approach them so you can facilitate their giving. Next is the use of a dashboard. Dashboards are kind of all the rage these days. I know that there are entire companies that build dashboards for nonprofits. I built a couple of dashboards. One is for our fundraising report card to help nonprofits understand how their fundraising measures up, their retention rate is, what their growth rate is, and I don't know, there must be 100 other kinds of metrics in there. But another dashboard that I think is actually exponentially more powerful is the MarketSmart Core Dashboard, which helps fundraisers determine who's really ready to be asked based on their feedback loop measurements, and we're tracking what people are doing online, what they're saying. We're capturing why they care. We're scoring all that, and we're also capturing information about people to help us determine if they are truly part of the Pareto principle, and it's not just through wealth screening, but we are able to determine whether or not people have a donor advised fund, if they have a family foundation, whether or not they ever had children. I know with a lot of screenings, you can find out if there's presence of children in the household, but you can't find out if people never had children. So we capture all of that. We monitor where people are in the consideration process by capturing information through the feedback loops, and all of that gets presented in the dashboard. The dashboard is a powerful qualifier. It prioritizes effort and time, and one of our clients even says it's the greatest staff optimization tool.
Yeah, and you can map out your visits to see where they are in the world. Also, so the last one we talked about was feedback loop. It's not a feedback loop unless you're plugging in to see which people are actually clicking on things. And if there's no system in place to gather that data that could be collected, it's not a feedback loop.
Yeah, dashboards help you really zero in on the important data, what I like to call actionable data. Frankly, there's too much darn data in the universe right now.
Yeah,
so
we're overloaded for sure.
We are all overloaded. The dashboard is a distiller of information. And that's why I say it's the fourth key component of engagement fundraising is to employ a dashboard.
Guess who we got to sponsor this episode? Well, nobody. So here's some info about our free fundraising report card. This episode is brought to you by fundraisingreportcard.com. Simple fundraising analytics for nonprofits. Enhance your fundraising today with effortless, easy, and free-to-use analytics and charts. Get started by going to fundraisingreportcard.com. Now, let's get back to the 8 core components of engagement fundraising.
Next is the use of valuable engagement offers. So when you say offers, usually one thinks about retail offers.
Yeah. And in this world, it could be something like capital campaigns trying to close in that last 30%. When you're talking to the populist people trying to fill in the gap from the major people. But it would also include volunteering opportunities. What else?
Offers need to be developed to attract people to engage. It's that simple. Sometimes offers should also be used to inspire people to give. The problem, though, in the sector is that too often the only kind of offer that supporters get is an offer to give.
It's the ATM offer.
Yes, you are our ATM, so we are here to press your buttons and get money out of you. And some people feel that they need to give. Maybe it's for religious reasons. Maybe it's because it made them feel good last time. But if the offer that you get presented with is only to give every time or most of the times, that's kind of like having a family member who every time they come to visit asks you for money, right?
Right, yeah.
It's really not fun to hang out with that family. If that family member instead came every Tuesday to help you take care of your mom, who's kind of sick, and then on the weekends, she actually comes and gives you a break and takes your kids out to the park, then one day that person asks you for money because they're behind on their bills or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're more likely to give it to her. But every time she comes to visit, she asks you for money.
You can't be a crappy person and expect to get money every time.
Even
with family.
Even with family. Charity and nonprofits are like family to many donors. In fact, that's why so many supporters leave charities in their will or their estate plan or in their insurance policy as a beneficiary, and in many instances actually remove their family members.
Yeah, because they're fed up with their family, but they like this nonprofit that they've been supporting their whole life.
That's right. Charity is a social endeavor, and as humans, we can make charity equivalent to family. So the trick for whether or not an engagement offer is valuable is determined first by the donor themselves. So that dovetails way back to your feedback loops and understanding why people give and making sure that those engagement offers are relevant. So for instance, if somebody said in a survey 6 months ago that they would be interested and would consider volunteering, then a valuable engagement offer for that particular person, or maybe there's 617 people who said in that survey that they would be interested in volunteering, then a valuable engagement offer would be to provide them with an opportunity to volunteer. That's a great engagement offer. The trick is to figure out what people's needs are, where they are in the consideration process, and then deliver those offers in line with the right timing and making sure that they're relevant so that they provide value.
Sure.
Now, if you're using offers properly and you've collected all this information properly and you're using the Pareto principle, at some point you're going to want to get people to raise their hands so that you, the fundraiser, can have a one-to-one relationship with them, which it only builds their trust further and helps facilitate the giving process. Because in the end, we need to have a human one-to-one personal connection so that the donor feels they can depend on the organization to use their money to make a meaningful impact. That level of trust needs to be there, and it can only be gained for real high-level giving if you bring people together. Now, the only way to bring people together is to generate leads. So we need to get donors to raise their hands and say, the time is right. I now want to talk to a human being.
Yeah, the face-to-face meeting, the one-on-one.
Yeah, and it's kind of like buying cars these days. I hate to use cars and giving as an analogy, but it's really true because let's face it, buying a Acura is a major purchase. So it may be $35,000, right? And a car buyer's first going to ask their friends about their Acura. They may go online and create their own car and change some colors and look at interiors, and they may go to comparative sites similar to what donors do by looking at Charity Navigator and comparative sites about charities. They'll look and see, well, this one's got more horsepower, that one has less, this one's got better safety ratings. And then when they're kind of ready and they want to get inside it, they want to test drive it, that's when they will fill out the form or go down to the dealer and actually press the flesh and meet with somebody and get to kick the tires and poke and prod and ask questions.
Yeah.
And that's where the facilitator in that case is the car salesperson who fully gain their trust, prove to the buyer that they have knowledge and that they can help facilitate the process the rest of the way.
Yeah. And I guess going back to the engagement offers, one of the offers could be inviting them to a lunch or something. It's not asking them for money exactly, but gets you pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a lunch and learn. It could be a tour of a facility. One of our clients that's a hospital and cancer research center does really well with providing tours.
Yeah.
It could be providing a webinar so that people from far distances can get involved and can see what's going on.
Universities have weekend event for donors.
Yeah, the trick is to get people engaged, get them nearby, get them. It's kind of like getting in the car. I mean, let's face it, auto salespeople know that if they can get you in the car, the likelihood of you buying that car is much, much greater.
So you can start to visualize yourself owning this car when you're driving.
Yeah, and you can feel that the car is good for you. It feels right. It's a good fit. Same thing with giving. You know, there's a lot of major donors that will test out an organization by volunteering, but never letting them know that they're wealthy. Yeah. And they'll volunteer to see, well, what's going on behind the scenes here? And how do they treat me? And how do they treat other volunteers? And how do they treat their staff? So they're just kind of checking it out. And they're not ready to come forward yet. So they may have accepted that valuable engagement offer to involve themselves by volunteering. But then at some point, it would be best if we provide them an opportunity to talk to someone to facilitate that gift. And that is the sixth component. That is the employment of lead generation efforts. Now, next is the seventh component, which is to employ conversion efforts. So a lead generation is really kind of empty if you don't convert. So if you get 100 major donors to say that they're interested in talking and then you don't call them, or you don't email them, or you don't set up an appointment with them, or you don't go visit them, then it's all a big waste of time. So you should never generate leads unless you're ready for them and you have good converters, good facilitators in place. Now, a lot of nonprofits are strapped for resources, so they may not have those conversion efforts or those conversion tools in place. And that's okay, because frankly, what you can do, and this goes into the eighth core component, is to make sure that you have cultivation and stewardship efforts in place.
So conversion efforts, that's a more manual process versus cultivation, which automated emails and things of that nature?
Yeah, cultivation can be automated these days. So emails can be pre-written or pre-programmed, or thanks to what we're doing here with artificial intelligence, they can be developed almost like Siri or Alexa can respond to people in ways that are highly relevant and personalized, and help supporters consider the act of giving even more, so that in some cases they'll self-solicit and then they will self-convert. They will convert on their own. If you're going to generate a lot of leads, which I highly recommend, then you're going to want to prioritize first on the hottest leads and the ones that are most recent, most likely to make a gift. But the rest of them are going to need to be cultivated and kind of kept warm on the burner. And that's what cultivation efforts are for. So I'm going to run through them real quick. Is the 8 core components are: first, the acceptance of the Pareto principle; second, understanding why people really give, why each individual really gives; employing feedback loops; using a dashboard to help you understand all that data and prioritize and become more efficient and optimize your resources. Then using valuable engagement offers to entice people to involve themselves with your mission or the idea of giving, to generate leads so that people raise their hands and fundraisers can step forward to facilitate the giving process, employing conversion efforts so that facilitation actually takes place and the relationship is built with a human and not just your brand. And then finally, for all the people who are not quite ready to meet with a fundraiser or to complete their giving transaction, so to speak, you need to keep them warm on the burner. And that's what that last core component of employing cultivation efforts is all about.
Okay, fantastic. So those are the 8 core components of engagement fundraising. Thanks for listening to this episode of Engagement Fundraising. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll be going over the power of surveys and how best to utilize them. If you like this episode, make sure to pass it along to a friend or colleague and review the show on iTunes. For more information about MarketSmart, you can visit imarketsmart.com. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Thursday for a brand new episode.